he built an empire. But one letter forces him to face the past. What he finds will shock you. Watch until the end. The ending will surprise you. Comment below where you're watching from. We'd love to know. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful stories. Marcus Bryant adjusted the cuffs of his tailored suit as he stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his Manhattan penthouse. The vast city skyline stretched endlessly before him, a symbol of everything he had built through sheer determination and relentless hard work. At just 34, Marcus was a self-made tech millionaire, the founder of one of the most successful startups in the country. In an industry dominated by faces that rarely looked like his, he had broken through every barrier placed in his path. Yet, despite his towering success, a heavy weight pressed against his chest. His eyes drifted to the marble countertop where a plain white envelope rested, so out of place against the sleek, modern lines of his home. It had arrived that morning, hand-delivered to his assistant with no return address, no stamp, and no identifying marks except for his name written in bold, uneven letters. Marcus Bryant. Curiosity had gnawed at him all morning until finally he retrieved the envelope, sliding a silver letter opener under the flap. Inside, a single sheet of paper waited. The message was brief, printed in a basic font with no signature. Your father needs help. He is living under unbearable conditions. You need to come back. For a long moment, Marcus stared at the words, his throat tightening as a wave of memories crashed into him, memories he had buried deep. His father, Henry Bryant, had once been a pillar of strength and integrity. The man who had taught him how to throw a ball, how to be a man, how to survive in a world stacked against them. But that was before his mother died, before their world shattered, before Victoria came into their lives. Even thinking her name made Marcus's jaw tighten. Victoria Hartman. The woman his father married not even a year after his mother's death. A woman as cold and calculating as they came, with a permanent sneer of superiority and eyes that had always looked through Marcus like he was nothing more than a nuisance. She had swooped in when Henry was at his lowest, wrapping her claws around him and slowly suffocating everything good left in their home. After enduring years of her disdain and cruelty, Marcus had finally escaped. At 18, he'd packed his bags and left the small southern town he once called home, swearing never to return. He'd channeled his rage, his pain, and his grief into building his empire. And he had succeeded. Marcus Bryant had become a name, powerful, respected, and untouchable. Until now. The letter sat heavily in his hands. Who sent it? Why now? And what the hell was happening to his father? A part of him wanted to ignore it, to stay cocooned in his success. But another part, the son who still remembered the man who once lifted him onto his shoulders, knew he couldn't. The next morning, Marcus found himself boarding his private jet, the New York skyline disappearing behind him. Clouds swallowed the city as the plane soared, and with every mile the pit in his stomach grew. He hadn't been back in over a decade, and the thought of facing Victoria again made his skin crawl. Several hours later, the jet landed at a small regional airport. The suffocating heat and heavy southern air greeted him like an unwelcome embrace. He rented a car, a simple black sedan, and set off toward his old hometown. The farther he drove, the more the years seemed to peel away. The streets looked smaller now, the buildings more fragile. The once thriving Main Street was lined with boarded-up shops and fading signs, a ghost town compared to the vibrant city he had just left. By the time Marcus turned onto the long dirt driveway leading to his childhood home, his hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. What he saw made his stomach drop. The once beautiful white house, with its grand wraparound porch and perfectly trimmed hedges, was a shadow of its former self. Paint peeled from the siding. Shutters hung crooked. The yard was overrun with weeds, wild grass choking the life out of what used to be his mother's rose garden. The home he remembered was gone, replaced by this decaying corpse of a house. Marcus climbed out of the car, the crunch of gravel loud in the oppressive silence. Slowly, he made his way up the steps, each creak beneath his feet sending a shiver up his spine. He raised his hand and knocked. The sound echoed hollowly. For a moment, there was nothing. Then the door creaked open. Victoria Hartman stood there, almost exactly as he remembered her. Her blonde hair was perfectly coiffed, her makeup flawless, and a string of pearls hung around her neck like a badge of her self-importance. But behind her eyes, Marcus saw something else, something desperate and calculating. "Well, well," Victoria drawled, a cruel smile curling her lips. "Look who decided to come crawling back." "Where's my father?" Marcus demanded, his voice cold. Victoria's smile widened. "Henry? Oh, he's around, keeping himself busy. Why don't you come in? It's been far too long." Against every instinct screaming at him to turn and walk away, Marcus stepped inside. The air smelled of dust and mildew. What was once a warm family home now felt like a tomb. Furniture was threadbare, coated in grime. The hardwood floors his mother had once polished every Sunday were dull and scuffed. And then Marcus saw him. In the center of the living room, on his hands and knees, was Henry Bryant, his father, the man who had once seemed larger than life. Now reduced to this, Henry scrubbed the floor with a dirty rag, his shoulders hunched and trembling. His clothes hung off his frail frame, stained and worn thin. His hands, once steady and strong, shook with every movement. "Dad!" Marcus's voice cracked as he rushed forward. Henry didn't look up. He just kept scrubbing, like a man broken beyond repair. Victoria's laugh echoed behind him. "Don't mind him. He likes to keep busy, says it helps keep the place livable." Marcus turned, his fists clenched so tightly his nails dug into his palms. "What the hell is this?" "This?" Victoria arched a perfectly plucked brow. "This is life, Marcus. Your father knows his place." Without another word, Marcus dropped to his knees beside his father. "Dad, stop, please. You don't have to do this." Henry finally looked up, his eyes dull and empty. "It's fine, son. I'm fine." But he wasn't fine, not even close. And seeing him like this, humiliated, destroyed, broke something deep inside Marcus. He stood slowly, breathing hard as he turned to Victoria. "This ends now." Victoria smirked, but Marcus saw the flicker of fear in her eyes. "You don't get to waltz back in here after all these years and make demands. This is my house now. Your father knows that." Marcus took a step toward her, his voice low and steady. "We'll see about that." Without another word, he helped his father to his feet and led him out of the house. Victoria didn't stop him. She just watched, her smile forced, her eyes burning with hate. As Marcus guided his father into the car, one thing was crystal clear. He wasn't leaving until he reclaimed what was rightfully theirs. The fight for his father and their family's legacy had just begun. Marcus drove in tense silence, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles whitened. Beside him, Henry stared out of the passenger window, his expression blank, as though his mind was miles away. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows over the cracked roads of the dying town they had both once called home. The only sound in the car was the low hum of the engine and the distant chirping of cicadas. Marcus risked a glance at his father. The man who had once been his hero now looked like a ghost. Henry's shoulders were slumped, his frame thin and fragile. He was a far cry from the proud, strong figure Marcus remembered. The sight of him like this, broken, worn, defeated, filled Marcus with a mixture of guilt and burning rage. He should have come back sooner. "Dad," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I'm sorry." Henry didn't respond. His gaze remained fixed on something unseen outside the window. For a moment, Marcus wasn't sure if he'd even heard him. After driving for another 20 minutes, Marcus pulled into the small, run-down motel he had booked earlier that day. It was the only place in town that looked remotely safe, though it was a far cry from the luxury Marcus was used to. He turned off the engine and looked at his father. "Come on, Dad. Let's get you settled." Henry blinked slowly and gave a small nod. Marcus helped him out of the car, steadying him as they walked up the short set of steps to their room. The motel clerk hadn't even looked Marcus in the eye when he handed over the keys earlier. Another reminder of how this town operated, ruled by whispers and fear. Inside, the room was simple but clean. 2 beds, a small table, and a chair by the window. Marcus helped his father sit down, watching as Henry's hands trembled as he rested them on his knees. "I don't know why you came back, son," Henry finally said, his voice hoarse like he hadn't spoken much in a long time. "You got your own life now. You don't need to worry about me." Marcus knelt in front of him, forcing his father to meet his gaze. "I do need to worry about you. I should have come back sooner, but I'm here now, and I'm not leaving until I fix this." Henry let out a bitter laugh. "Fix what? The house? The money? It's gone, Marcus. All of it." Marcus stood slowly and grabbed his laptop from his bag, placing it on the small table. "It's not gone until I say it's gone." With that, he powered up the device and began typing. Years of running a successful tech company had sharpened his instincts. He knew how to dig, how to find what others tried to bury. If there were legal documents, financial records, or anything that could explain how his father had ended up like this, he would find them. The next morning, Marcus was already on the phone by the time his father woke up. He had made several calls, pulling every favor he was owed. By noon, he had hired a private investigator, Ronald Griffin, a man known for digging up dirt where no one else could. If Victoria thought she could hide behind forged documents and local corruption, she was about to learn otherwise. Ronald's reputation preceded him. "You got a hell of a case brewing, Mr. Bryant," the man had said after hearing the initial details. "I've dealt with people like her before. They're all the same, power-hungry, greedy, and sloppy when they think no one's looking." Marcus gave him everything he had: names, dates, old business records. "Start with the house," Marcus instructed. "I want every piece of paper connected to it, then the family business. My dad used to run a hardware store. Find out what happened to it." "I'm on it," Ronald promised. While Ronald began his investigation, Marcus visited the county courthouse. The building, once a proud symbol of the town's integrity, now looked just as worn and tired as everything else. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the quiet murmur of disinterested clerks shuffling papers. Marcus requested public records on the family home and the business. The clerk, a middle-aged man with thinning hair and tired eyes, seemed reluctant, but eventually relented after Marcus flashed his ID and offered a pointed reminder about public access laws. What Marcus found made his blood run cold. The deed to the family home had indeed been transferred to Victoria, years ago. The signature on the document appeared to be Henry's, but something about it felt off. The sale price was laughably low, less than half the market value at the time. And the date? Just weeks after his mother's death, when Henry had been drowning in grief. It wasn't just the house. The hardware store, once a cornerstone of the community, had been dissolved. Records showed that Victoria had convinced Henry to take out a massive loan against the business for supposed renovations. But the money had never gone into the store. Instead, it had disappeared into an account linked to Victoria. When the loan defaulted, the bank seized the property. Victoria walked away with whatever cash was left. The store was gone. The home was gone. And his father had been left with nothing. By the time Marcus returned to the motel that evening, he was shaken with anger. He shared the initial findings with Henry, who sat silently, his face pale and drawn. "I should have seen it," Henry muttered. "I should have known what she was doing." "You were grieving," Marcus said softly. "She took advantage of that. She took everything." Henry's hands clenched tightly around the armrest of the chair. "What do we do now?" "We fight," Marcus said, his voice steady. "We expose her for what she is. We get everything back." Over the next few days, Ronald continued digging, uncovering more layers of Victoria's deception. She had ties to local officials, bankers, even law enforcement. She'd built a web of power and influence that allowed her to operate without fear of consequence. And it wasn't just Marcus's family she had targeted. Ronald found records of other families, widows, single parents, people struggling with grief or financial ruin. Victoria had a pattern: find the vulnerable, insert herself into their lives, and strip them of everything. "She's been running a long con," Ronald explained over the phone. "Your father wasn't the first, and he won't be the last if she gets away with it." Marcus listened in grim silence, every word adding fuel to the fire burning in his chest. He spent the evenings talking to old neighbors and family friends. Most were hesitant, too afraid to speak against Victoria. But one, an elderly woman named Mrs. Harper, finally opened up over a cup of tea at her small kitchen table. "Victoria always had her ways," she said, shaking her head. "Your father was too broken to see it, but she didn't waste time worming her way into everything. Made sure everyone knew she was in charge. Anyone who crossed her regretted it." Marcus took careful notes, his mind already working through the next steps. That night, as he sat in the motel room staring at the wall, Marcus felt the weight of it all crashing down on him. But he refused to back down. He had fought harder battles in the business world. This was personal. This was family. He looked over at his father, who had finally fallen asleep in the chair by the window. For the first time since he arrived, Marcus saw a flicker of the man his father used to be, a glimpse of the pride and strength that Victoria had tried so hard to erase. "We're going to take everything back, Dad," Marcus whispered into the dark. "I swear it." The next phase was clear. It was time to confront Victoria Hartman head-on. But Marcus knew one thing. He couldn't do it unprepared. Not when the stakes were this high. The battle for the Bryant family legacy was just beginning. The morning sun barely crept over the horizon when Marcus opened his eyes, his mind already consumed with the next move. He hadn't slept much, too busy replaying Ronald Griffin's words and the evidence they'd uncovered. The weight of what Victoria had done, how thoroughly she had dismantled their family, settled on him like a heavy cloak. But today wasn't for grief. It was time to act. Marcus sat at the small table in the motel room, maps and documents spread before him. He circled key locations in red ink: the courthouse, the bank where the loans had been processed, and most importantly, the family home that no longer belonged to them. Next to the map were stacks of files Ronald had sent over the night before. Each paper, each signature, told a story of greed and betrayal. His father, Henry, stirred in the chair by the window. Though he still looked frail, there was something different in his eyes, a faint glimmer of the man Marcus remembered. A trace of strength slowly returning. Marcus turned toward him. "We have everything we need, Dad. Fraud, forgery, tax evasion, and connections that go deeper than we imagined. She's not going to walk away from this." Henry shook his head slowly. "Son, you don't know the kind of woman she is. Victoria's dangerous. She'll do whatever it takes to protect herself." Marcus nodded grimly. "I've faced worse. And this time, it's personal." Ronald called shortly after, his voice sharp and focused. "I've been poking the hornet's nest, Marcus. She knows someone's digging. Word is, Victoria's reaching out to her contacts, trying to cover her tracks. She's spooked." "Good," Marcus replied coldly. "Let her know I'm coming." It was time for the first real confrontation. Marcus knew Victoria wouldn't go down without a fight, but he needed to see her face when she realized her carefully constructed empire was crumbling. He needed to test her, to gauge just how far she was willing to go. He gathered the documents, the fake deeds, the fraudulent loans, the bank records, all of it neatly compiled into a folder. Then he grabbed the car keys. "Come on, Dad," he said. "You don't have to say a word. Just be there." Henry hesitated but finally nodded. Together, they drove through the quiet town, the streets eerily empty, as if the whole place was holding its breath. The house looked worse in the harsh daylight. The peel-in paint, the sagging porch, the broken shutters, each a symbol of the rot Victoria had brought. But Marcus didn't falter. He parked the car and climbed the steps, Henry trailing behind him. He knocked, loud and purposeful. After a long pause, the door creaked open. Victoria stood there, dressed impeccably as always. Her crisp blouse and pearl earrings looked ridiculous against the backdrop of decay. But it was her eyes that gave her away, narrowed, calculating, already assessing the situation. "Well, well," she drawled, leaning against the door frame. "Back so soon? To what do I owe the pleasure this time?" Marcus didn't waste words. He stepped inside, his presence filling the room. "We need to talk." Victoria arched an eyebrow, amusement flickering across her face. "Is that so? And what could we possibly have to discuss, Marcus? I thought you made your position quite clear." Without responding, Marcus dropped the folder onto the coffee table. The papers spilled out: legal documents, bank records, photographs of forged signatures, evidence of everything she'd done. "These," Marcus said, his voice low and steady, "this is what we're going to discuss." For the briefest moment, Victoria's composure faltered. Her eyes darted to the papers before snapping back to Marcus. But her smirk returned quickly. "You always were good at playing detective, weren't you? But tell me, Marcus, what do you plan to do with all that? Wave it around and hope someone cares?" "I don't have to hope," Marcus shot back. I know people care, and I've brought them with me." He gestured toward the window where a car sat idling. Ronald Griffin stepped out, camera in hand. Next to him was Emma Reed, a journalist from a national outlet Marcus had contacted. Emma's reputation for exposing small-town corruption was well known, and she hadn't hesitated when Marcus shared his story. Victoria's face paled slightly. "You're making a mistake," she hissed. "You think you can just stroll back into this town and take me down? You have no idea how deep my roots go." "I know exactly who you are," Marcus replied. "You're a scared woman who's been living off other people's grief for years, but it ends now." Victoria stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You don't know what you're doing, boy. You think those people out there can protect you? They'll be gone the second this gets messy." Marcus didn't flinch. "Then let it get messy." For a moment, they stood there, two forces locked in silent battle. Then Victoria laughed bitterly and turned away. "Fine. You want to play this game? Let's play." The tension was thick as Marcus left the house, his father silent beside him. Once outside, Ronald approached. "She's rattled. You did good." Emma nodded, already scribbling notes. "There's a story here, Marcus, a big one, and when it breaks she won't have anywhere to hide." But Marcus knew it wasn't over. Victoria was dangerous, and now that she knew the walls were closing in, she would lash out. That night, the first shot was fired. As Marcus and Henry returned to the motel, they found the door ajar. Inside, the room had been trashed. Papers were scattered, furniture overturned, and on the wall, scrawled in red paint, were the words, "Leave or else." Henry sank into a chair, his face pale. "This is my fault," he whispered. "I should have stopped her years ago." Marcus placed a steady hand on his father's shoulder. "No, Dad. This is her. This is what she does when she's scared. And it means we're close." Despite the threat, Marcus refused to back down. He called Ronald immediately. "She sent a message. Someone trashed the room." "I figured she'd try something," Ronald muttered. "Stay sharp, Marcus. She's cornered, and cornered animals are the most dangerous." Marcus spent the rest of the night securing the evidence, making copies, and sending backups to multiple locations. He wasn't going to give Victoria the chance to bury the truth. The next day brought more pressure. The local bank refused to release certain records without a court order. City officials, once polite, now ignored his calls. Even the motel manager grew distant, avoiding eye contact when Marcus passed by. But Marcus pressed on. Every move Victoria made only fueled his determination. Henry watched his son work, pride slowly returning to his eyes. "You're not the boy who left here, Marcus," he said quietly. "You're a man now, and you're doing what I couldn't." Marcus smiled faintly. "We're doing this together, Dad." The next step was clear. Victoria knew he was serious, but she still thought she could scare him off. She was wrong. Marcus looked at Ronald and Emma. "It's time to finish this. I want everyone ready. The journalist, the feds, everyone. We hit her hard, and we hit her next." They nodded. The final confrontation was coming. And Marcus Bryant was ready. The morning air was thick with tension as Marcus sat quietly at the motel table, his eyes locked on the growing stack of documents in front of him. Every paper Ronald had dug up, every piece of evidence Emma had verified, it all pointed to the same chilling truth. Victoria wasn't just a manipulative woman who ruined his family. She was a predator. and she'd done this before. Ronald arrived early, his expression grim. He carried a thick manila folder and set it down heavily on the table. "You need to see this," he said. Marcus opened the folder, his eyes scanning through the contents. More names, more families, all of them with similar stories. Spouses who had died, financial hardships, people in mourning or desperate for help. Victoria had found them all, wormed her way into their lives, and systematically destroyed them for profit. "She's been doing this for years," Ronald said, his voice low. "Your father wasn't the first, and he won't be the last if we don't stop her now." Marcus's jaw clenched as he turned another page. Victoria's connections were deeper than he'd imagined. Local politicians, bankers, lawyers, and even police officers all had played a role, either directly or by looking the other way. Some had profited, others had simply been too afraid to stand against her. "She's untouchable here," Ronald added. "That's how she survived this long." "Then we make her touchable," Marcus replied coldly. Emma walked in then, her notepad in hand. "I've got enough here for a full exposé," she said. "Once this story goes public, people will have no choice but to pay attention. Even her connections can't protect her from national coverage." But Marcus knew exposure wasn't enough. Victoria needed to be dismantled piece by piece until there was nothing left of her influence. That afternoon, Marcus drove to the courthouse again. The clerk, who had previously been reluctant but helpful, now avoided eye contact. "I'm sorry, Mr. Bryant," he mumbled. "Those records you requested, turns out they're sealed now. New order from the judge." "Sealed?" Marcus snapped. "You told me they were public." "They were," the clerk stammered. Well, Judge Simmons signed the order this morning. There's nothing I can do." Marcus's hands curled into fists. Another one of Victoria's puppets. Another roadblock. When he returned to the motel, Ronald was waiting. "She's tightening her grip. Word is, she's planning something." "She's scared," Marcus replied, "and that makes her sloppy." That night, they gathered in the motel room. Marcus, Ronald, Emma, and Henry. The air was heavy, every person aware of how close they were to the final fight. "She's going to hit back," Ronald warned. "I guarantee it. And she'll use every dirty trick she's got." "Let her," Marcus said, "because we're ready." Emma leaned forward. "You know what you're risking, Marcus? If she gets desperate enough, she won't just come after you. She'll try to bury this whole thing permanently." "I know," Marcus said, "but this doesn't stop until she's done." The next morning brought another sign of Victoria's desperation. As Marcus and Henry were leaving the motel, they spotted a black SUV parked across the street. It followed them through town, staying just far enough back to avoid confrontation but close enough to send a message. "Don't panic," Marcus said quietly to his father. "It's just intimidation." Henry's face was pale, but he nodded. They drove through town, leading the SUV on a winding path through side streets and alleys until finally Marcus pulled into a gas station, parking directly under the bright lights. The SUV idled for a moment, then sped off. "She's running out of moves," Marcus muttered. "And now she's desperate." When they returned to the motel, Ronald was waiting with more bad news. City Hall won't release the permits. The bank won't release the loan files without a court order. She's using every connection she has. "I expected this," Marcus replied. "That's why we go around them." Emma spoke up. "I made some calls. A few people from the state level are interested. And there's more. I reached out to the feds, IRS, to be exact." Marcus's eyes snapped to her. And? They're watching now, Emma said. If what we're seeing is real, and it is, there's enough here for them to open a case. They just need a reason to move. That's what we're giving them, Marcus said. That night, they sat together again, going over every detail. Every forged signature, every fraudulent loan, every manipulated piece of property. Marcus stared at the photos of the other victims, faces of men, women, children, all destroyed by Victoria's greed. "This ends now," Marcus said, his voice like steel. "We hit her tomorrow, hard, and we make sure she can't get back up." Ronald nodded. "We'll bring everyone. Me, Emma, and the agents. Once it starts, it doesn't stop until she's in handcuffs." Henry's voice cracked as he spoke. "Are you sure, son? Once you do this, there's no going back." Marcus turned to his father, meeting his eyes. "There's nothing to go back to. It's time." Outside, the wind picked up, the sky darkening as a storm gathered on the horizon. The final battle was coming, and Marcus Bryant was ready. The day of reckoning arrived under a sky thick with clouds, the air heavy with the promise of rain. Marcus stood outside the motel, his hands shoved deep into his pockets as he stared down the empty road that led back to the house he once called home. Everything he and Ronald had uncovered, every lie Victoria Hartman had told, every life she had ruined, all of it led to this moment. Henry sat quietly in the passenger seat as Marcus climbed into the car. There was a tension in his father's posture, but also a flicker of something else, pride. For the first time in years, Henry Bryant looked ready to face what waited for them. "You ready, Dad?" Marcus asked softly. Henry nodded. "Let's finish this." The plan was simple. Marcus had gathered everything: documents, bank records, testimonies. Ronald had arranged for the journalist Emma Reed to be there, camera ready, every word to be documented. But the final piece, the one Victoria never expected, came in the form of 2 federal agents who had been quietly briefed on the case. They had seen enough to know Marcus wasn't bluffing. They all met at a spot just outside the house. Ronald pulled Marcus aside. "She'll know the second we show up together this isn't just another visit. Be ready." Marcus nodded once. "That's the point." From the car, Marcus stared at the house. It was barely standing, peeling paint, rotted porch, the yard overtaken by weeds. It was the perfect symbol of what Victoria had become. A woman desperate to hold on to a decaying throne. When they arrived, Victoria was already waiting on the front steps. Dressed in her usual pristine white blouse, pearls gleaming against her neck, she carried herself with an air of forced confidence. But Marcus saw it immediately. The slight twitch in her jaw, the way her eyes darted to the unfamiliar car behind them. "Well," Victoria called out, her voice laced with mockery. "Looks like you brought the whole circus. What's the matter, Marcus? Couldn't handle me on your own?" Marcus didn't rise to the bait. He moved forward, the folder of evidence tucked under his arm. "It's over, Victoria." She laughed, loud and bitter. "Over? You think this little show changes anything? This is my house, my town. I've survived worse." "Not this time," Marcus said, his voice calm but deadly. He opened the folder, pulling out the documents one by one. Fraudulent deeds, forged signatures, fraudulent loans, all leading back to you. And these gentlemen, he nodded toward the federal agents, are very interested in hearing your explanation. Victoria's smile faltered as the agent stepped forward. One of them produced a badge. "Mrs. Hartman, we're investigating multiple counts of fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy. You're going to want a lawyer." Emma raised her camera, recording every second. Victoria's eyes flashed with rage. "You set me up," she hissed at Marcus. "No," Marcus replied coldly. "You did this to yourself." For a moment, Victoria stood frozen. Then she turned on Henry. "You weak, pathetic man. You let him do this. After everything I did for you." Henry's voice, weak but steady, cut through her tirade. "You did nothing but destroy us." Victoria's chest heaved as she looked from Henry to Marcus and back again. "None of this will stick. You don't know how this town works. They're all mine." "Not anymore," Marcus shot back. "Your time is up." The agents stepped closer, one of them reaching for his cuffs. "Mrs. Hartman, you need to come with us." "Don't touch me!" she shrieked, but it was no use. Her reign was crumbling. As they led her to the car, Victoria twisted back toward Marcus, her face contorted with rage. "You think you've won? You're just like your father, weak." Marcus didn't blink. "No, Victoria, I'm nothing like him. And now, neither is he." The car door slammed shut, and Victoria Hartman was driven away. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind rustling through the dead grass. Henry sat on the steps, staring at the house. "It's not the same," he whispered. "It'll never be the same." Marcus sat beside him. "No, but it's ours again." Emma lowered her camera. "That was brave, Marcus. Not many people would have faced her like that." Ronald nodded. "She won't see the outside of a cell for a long time. Between the federal charges and the media exposure, she's finished." But Marcus wasn't thinking about Victoria anymore. He looked at his father, truly looked, and saw the years of pain starting to lift, slowly, piece by piece. "We're not done," Marcus said. "The house, the business, everything she took, we're getting it back. And when we do, we make sure no one else has to go through what we did." Henry's eyes watered, but he smiled. "Your mother would have been proud." "I hope so," Marcus whispered. The group dispersed slowly, the agents taking Victoria away, Emma packing up her gear. Ronald clapped Marcus on the shoulder. "You did good, kid." As the sun began to set, Marcus stood, staring at the house one last time. There was so much work to be done. Repairs, rebuilding, healing. But for the first time, he felt hope. Victoria was gone, and the Bryants had won. But this was just the beginning of what Marcus had planned. The fight for their family's legacy wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The days following Victoria's arrest passed in a blur. The town, once silent and complicit, buzzed with whispers and rumors. News of her downfall spread quickly, carried by Emma Reed's published expose and the federal charges that now hung over Victoria Hartman's head like a noose. For the first time in years, the people of that small southern town realized that Victoria wasn't untouchable, and neither were the corrupt officials who had protected her. Marcus sat at the kitchen table of the old house, his house now, staring at the piles of paperwork that represented everything Victoria had stolen. The federal agents had handed over what they recovered: financial records, loan documents, property deeds. Each page was proof of her crimes, and each page made Marcus's resolve even stronger. The house felt emptier without Victoria, but the air was lighter. The decay was still there. Rotting wood, cracked walls, the stink of mold, but for the first time, Marcus could breathe. Henry moved slowly through the house, his posture straighter, his eyes clearer. He wasn't the broken man scrubbing floors anymore. He was reclaiming his space, piece by piece. "We have a long way to go," Henry said one evening, his voice low as he watched Marcus sort through the documents. "I know," Marcus replied. "But we're not just rebuilding the house, Dad. We're rebuilding our family." Henry gave a soft nod, his lips trembling as if the weight of those words was just hitting him. Ronald stopped by the next morning, a rare grin on his face. "The feds are pressing charges, and the DA's office just confirmed they're reopening old cases Victoria was involved in. Looks like you started a firestorm, Marcus." Marcus leaned back in his chair, exhaustion written all over him. "Good. Burn it all down if we have to." Emma joined them later, her notepad, as always, in hand. The stories picked up steam. National outlets are calling. People wanted to know how a woman like Victoria operated for so long without anyone stopping her. "Fear?" Henry answered quietly from his chair. "She kept everyone afraid." "Well, not anymore," Emma said. "The story's out. People are paying attention." But Marcus wasn't satisfied. Exposing Victoria wasn't enough. She'd destroyed families, stolen homes, ripped apart lives. He needed to make sure it never happened again. "I want to start something," Marcus said suddenly, his voice breaking the silence. "A community center, a place where people can get help, legal aid, financial advice, somewhere safe." Ronald's eyebrows rose. "You serious?" "Dead serious," Marcus replied. "She preyed on people who were vulnerable, who didn't know how to fight back. That ends here." Henry's eyes glistened with pride. "Your mother would have liked that." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "I hope so." They wasted no time. Marcus reached out to his contacts back in New York. Friends, business partners, allies. He told them the story, laid out the plan, and asked for their help. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in. Lawyers volunteered their time. Financial advisors offered free workshops. Even construction companies offered to help restore the old house and build the community center from the ground up. The transformation was slow but steady. The peeling paint was stripped away, the rotted wood replaced. The yard was cleared of weeds, and in their place, fresh grass and flowers bloomed. The house started to look like a home again, not just for Marcus and Henry, but for everyone the center would serve. Through it all, Henry found purpose. He started sitting in on meetings, offering advice, sharing his story. What was once a source of shame became a lesson, a warning, and a testament to survival. "I never thought I'd see this," Henry admitted one night as he and Marcus walked the newly cleaned porch. "I thought the best parts of my life were behind me." "They're not," Marcus replied. "We're just getting started." As the grand opening neared, the town's attitude shifted. Neighbors who once averted their eyes now stopped to offer help. Former friends Henry hadn't seen in years came forward, some with apologies, others with quiet words of support. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Emma chronicled it all, her articles painting a picture of redemption, resilience, and change. "You've done something here, Marcus," she told him. "This isn't just about taking Victoria down. You're giving people hope." That hope became real when the sign went up. The Bryant Community Center, a place for justice, hope, and healing. The day before the opening, Marcus stood alone on the porch, staring out at the land that had once been his prison and was now his legacy. His phone buzzed. It was Ronald. "You ready for tomorrow?" Ronald asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," Marcus replied. "You did good, kid. No matter what happens, you did good." Marcus smiled faintly. "Thanks, Ronald. See you tomorrow." As night fell, Marcus found his father sitting in the living room, staring at an old photo of his wife, Marcus's mother. Her kind eyes seemed to watch over them, a silent witness to their journey. "I miss her every day," Henry whispered. "Me too," Marcus replied. Henry looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "She'd be proud of you." Marcus swallowed hard, his voice cracking. "I hope so." They sat in silence, the house around them no longer a place of sorrow but a place of new beginnings. Tomorrow they would open the doors. Tomorrow they would show the town and the world that the Bryants were still standing. And this time, no one was going to take that away from them. The morning of the grand opening arrived with a golden sunrise casting warm light over the freshly painted Bryant house. The air buzzed with quiet anticipation as people gathered, neighbors, old friends, reporters, and even strangers from neighboring towns drawn by the story that had captivated the region. What once stood as a symbol of decay and corruption was now a beacon of hope. Marcus stood on the porch, adjusting the sleeves of his crisp white shirt as he looked out over the crowd. The new sign gleamed proudly: the Bryant Community Center, a place for justice, hope, and healing. It was more than just words. It was a promise. Henry stood beside his son, shoulders squared, dressed in his best suit. There was a pride in his eyes Marcus hadn't seen since he was a boy. "I never thought we'd see this day," Henry said, his voice trembling slightly. Marcus smiled. "We earned this, Dad, every bit of it." As people settled into the chairs arranged on the freshly mowed lawn, Emma Reed stepped forward, camera crew in tow. She gave Marcus a small nod before speaking into her microphone, capturing the moment for the world to see. "Today marks the beginning of a new chapter for the Bryant family and for this town. What was once the center of corruption and manipulation will now serve as a refuge for those seeking justice." Marcus took a deep breath and stepped up to the podium placed on the porch. The crowd grew silent. He scanned the faces before him, some familiar, some curious, some skeptical, but all waiting for what he had to say. "Thank you all for being here," Marcus began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "For most of my life, this house represented pain. It was a place where my family was broken, where we lost everything because of greed and cruelty. But today, we take it back. Today, this house becomes a place of healing." He paused, glancing at Henry, who gave him an encouraging nod. "We all know what happened here. We all saw how power in the wrong hands can destroy lives. My family wasn't the only one. There are others. Families who lost homes, businesses, hope, because no one was willing to stand up. Well, that ends now." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. This center is for them. For anyone who's ever felt powerless, for anyone who's ever needed a helping hand and didn't know where to turn. Here, you'll find legal aid, financial counseling, community support. You'll find people who care, people who understand. Emma captured every word, her camera crew zooming in as Marcus's voice grew stronger. "My father taught me the value of hard work and integrity," Marcus continued. "Even when he was broken, even when he was on his knees scrubbing floors, he never lost that. And now we stand here together, not just as survivors, but as fighters." The crowd erupted in applause, some people wiping away tears. Henry smiled, his eyes shimmering with pride. Marcus gestured toward the building. "Inside, you'll see the beginnings of what we're building. A library, classrooms, meeting spaces. It's just the start. We have plans to expand, to bring in more resources, to create scholarships and mentorship programs. This is just the beginning. Ronald stood at the back, arms crossed, a rare smile breaking across his face. Emma caught his expression and gave him a knowing nod. They both understood how rare moments like this were. After the speech, Marcus and Henry cut the ribbon together, the crowd cheering as the doors opened. People streamed inside, exploring the rooms, marveling at the transformation. The smell of fresh paint mixed with the aroma of coffee and baked goods set out for the guests. In one of the main rooms, photos lined the walls, images of families Victoria had hurt, alongside new pictures of those same families rebuilding, smiling, a testament to resilience. Henry found himself surrounded by neighbors, people who once avoided him now reaching out, shaking his hand, thanking him for standing up. "We should have said something," one man admitted. "We should have helped." Henry simply smiled. "You're here now. That's what matters." Emma approached Marcus as the crowd thinned. "You pulled it off," she said. "I've covered a lot of stories, Marcus, but this is special." "Because it's real," Marcus replied. "Because it matters." She nodded. "I'll be back. People are going to want updates. They're going to want to see what you build." "You're welcome any time," Marcus said. By afternoon, the sun hung high and the once ruined property buzzed with life. Children played in the yard, volunteers led tours, and Henry sat on the porch, laughing, a sound Marcus hadn't heard in years. Ronald leaned against the railing, watching it all unfold. "You did good, kid. Damn good." Marcus joined him, both men staring out at the scene. "It's not just about us anymore. This," he gestured around them, "this is for everyone Victoria hurt, and for everyone like her out there." "She won't hurt anyone again," Ronald said. "No," Marcus agreed, "and neither will anyone like her. Not while we're here." As the sun began to set, Marcus and Henry sat together on the porch, the sky ablaze with colors. The weight they carried for so long felt lighter now, replaced by a quiet peace neither thought they'd ever feel again. "You did it, son," Henry said softly. "You saved us." Marcus shook his head. "We saved each other." They sat in comfortable silence, watching as the community center, their community center, continued to fill with laughter, hope, and life. For the first time in years, Marcus Bryant knew one thing for certain. Their legacy was safe, and the future was finally theirs. Sometimes, the road to justice leads right back to the place you fear the most. What would you do in his place? Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us, where are you watching from? Don't forget to like and subscribe. More emotional stories are coming your way.